She cried when the rancher pulled the iron arrow from her chest, until she realized he was bleeding. The sun hung low over the wide-open fields of the ranch, casting long, golden shadows across the tall grass. Birds chirped softly, and the wind rustled through the leaves of the old oak trees that lined the edge of the property. It was the kind of quiet that felt both peaceful and alive, as if the land itself was breathing. The ranch had always been a place of calm for those who knew it well, a place where life moved slowly and each day had a rhythm of its own. But for the woman who had arrived that morning, this was a world she had only seen in photographs and movies, not in real life. She stepped carefully onto the soft, uneven ground, her camera swinging gently from her neck. Every so often she crouched to take a picture of a bird perched on a branch or a butterfly that fluttered over the wildflowers. She moved with a mixture of excitement and caution, aware that she was a visitor in a space where every sound and movement mattered. The ranch seemed vast, stretching farther than her eyes could see, with fields rolling into gentle hills and horses grazing in the distance. She could hear their soft nickering and the occasional clatter of hooves against the wooden fences. It was beautiful, and it made her heart beat faster. Not far from her, the rancher watched silently. He leaned against the weathered fence, arms crossed, his eyes following her every step. He was a man of strength, not just in his build, but in his presence. There was something in the way he moved and observed the land that spoke of years of experience, of a life spent knowing the rhythm of nature and the animals he cared for. His hat was pulled low over his forehead, and dust clung to his boots from working the land all day. Yet despite the hard work etched into his face, there was a gentleness in the way he looked at the woman, as though he understood the wonder she felt stepping onto his land for the first time. "Be careful near the river," he called out, his voice steady but kind. "The ground can be slippery, and it's easy to lose your footing." She turned toward him and smiled, slightly embarrassed. "Thank you." "I'll watch my step," she replied, adjusting her camera strap. She had been so absorbed in capturing the perfect shot that she hadn't noticed how close she had come to the water's edge. The rancher nodded, satisfied, then fell silent again, watching her move with practiced ease through the tall grass. As they walked together along a narrow path that wound through the fields, he pointed out the different animals that roamed freely across the ranch. A small herd of deer grazed in the distance, their ears twitching at every sound. A group of wild turkeys strutted through the underbrush, their feathers catching the sunlight. She snapped photo after photo, capturing the simple beauty of life that she rarely saw in the city. The rancher spoke occasionally, sharing stories about the land and the animals. He spoke of a horse that had once wandered for days before finding its way back, of the challenges of keeping predators away, and of the joy that came with seeing a calf take its first steps. His voice was calm, steady, and full of authority, but also laced with warmth. She listened, fascinated not only by the stories but by the man telling them. There was a quiet confidence in him, a sense that he had seen and handled more than most people could imagine. As they moved farther from the main house, the landscape changed. The trees grew taller and closer together, creating pockets of shade where the sunlight barely touched the ground. The sound of the river grew louder, mingling with the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds. She slowed her pace, taking care with each step, her eyes scanning for interesting scenes to photograph. The rancher stayed close behind, his presence both comforting and grounding. Suddenly a movement caught her eye. A flash of color among the green leaves, a bird she had never seen before. She raised her camera, her fingers trembling slightly with excitement. The rancher stopped a few feet behind her, watching silently, his eyes alert. She moved closer, stepping carefully over a fallen branch, completely focused on the bird. It didn't notice her at first, and she crouched slightly to get a better angle. "Wait," the rancher said softly, stepping closer. "Be careful, the ground is uneven here." She nodded, but her attention was on the bird. Her heart beat faster as she adjusted the lens, trying to capture its delicate movements. For a moment it felt as if nothing else in the world existed except her, the bird, and the soft rustle of the leaves around them. Then she felt it, a sudden sharp sense of danger. Something moved quickly in the corner of her eye. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The rancher was already moving, stepping forward in a protective stance, his eyes scanning the trees and underbrush. "Stay still," he said quietly but firmly. "Don't move." The air felt heavier, charged with tension. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, faster and louder than ever before. The rancher's gaze never wavered, and she realized for the first time how alert he was, how ready to act. She had always known he was strong and capable, but this was different. This was instinct, honed by years of experience. and it was intimidating in its intensity. For a few tense moments, nothing happened. The wind whispered through the leaves, and the bird fluttered away, startled by the sudden movement. She exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. The rancher stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "It's okay," he said. "It's gone now." "You're safe." Her hands trembled slightly as she lowered the camera. She looked at him, really looked, and noticed the careful way he moved, the way his eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, always alert, always protecting. There was a seriousness there, a quiet strength, and for some reason it made her feel both grateful and vulnerable. They continued along the path, moving deeper into the ranch. The beauty of the land was undeniable, but now there was an undercurrent of tension, a sense that anything could happen at any moment. She felt her senses sharpen, noticing every sound, every shadow, every subtle change in the environment. The rancher walked slightly ahead now, guiding her, his presence reassuring. As they reached a small clearing, he stopped and gestured toward a cluster of wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. "Look at these," he said. "They bloom only for a few weeks every year. If you time it right, you can capture something special." She knelt among the flowers, her camera poised, trying to frame the perfect shot. The rancher stood a few feet away, watching her work. She felt a strange mix of admiration and curiosity about him. He was a man of action, of instinct, but also of patience and care. She wondered how someone could carry such strength and gentleness at the same time. For a while they worked in silence, the only sounds the soft hum of nature and the occasional click of the camera. She felt herself relaxing, letting go of the tension from earlier, but she couldn't shake the awareness that the rancher was always watching, always ready. It was comforting and unnerving all at once. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long, warm shadows across the clearing, the rancher finally spoke. "We should head back soon," he said. "It's easy to lose track of time out here, and the light changes quickly." She nodded, reluctantly packing up her camera. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything today. I've never seen anything like this." He smiled faintly, tipping his hat. "You're welcome. Just remember, out here, it's not just about what you see. It's about understanding the land, the animals, and the risks. Respect that, and you'll learn more than any photo can show." She nodded, feeling the weight of his words. There was wisdom in them, and a subtle warning. The rancher led her back along the path, moving with careful steps, his eyes scanning the trees and underbrush as if expecting something to appear at any moment. She followed, feeling a growing respect for this man who seemed to know the land so intimately and who moved through it with such quiet authority. As they approached the edge of the clearing, she glanced at him again, noticing the small details, the calluses on his hands, the way his boots were worn from years of work, the calm but alert expression on his face. He was a man shaped by the land, by experience, and by responsibility. She realized that while she had come seeking beauty and adventure, she had also found safety and guidance in a place she had never known she needed. And in that moment, as the sun dipped closer to the horizon and the ranch stretched endlessly around them, she felt a mixture of awe and anticipation. There was something about this place, about the land and the man who protected it, that promised both wonder and danger. She didn't know it yet, but her visit to the ranch was about to change everything. The sun had dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, when the rancher led the woman further into the heart of the ranch. The tall grass now cast long shadows that danced with the soft breeze, and the river gurgled in the distance, a soothing background to the quiet tension that had settled over them. The woman's camera hung around her neck, but she found herself observing everything with more than just the lens now. She noticed how the rancher moved, careful with each step, his eyes scanning the surroundings with a quiet alertness. She realized he wasn't just guiding her for pleasure, he was protecting her. She tried to match his pace, careful not to stumble on the uneven ground. The thrill of being out here, away from the city and its noise, made her heart race, but there was also a quiet unease she couldn't shake. The rancher, sensing it, gave her a brief, reassuring glance. "Stay close," he said softly. "Things can change quickly out here." His tone was calm, almost casual, but she sensed the urgency hidden beneath his words. As they walked, she noticed a flash of bright colors in a cluster of bushes ahead. She pointed toward it excitedly. "Look! Is that?" She stopped, crouching slightly to get a better view. The rancher's eyes followed her gesture, narrowing slightly as he focused. "It's a rare bird," he said quietly. "I've only seen a few around here this season. Be careful when you move closer." Her pulse quickened. She adjusted her camera, trying to capture the vibrant feathers glinting in the fading sunlight. She had never felt so close to a creature in the wild before. She took a small step forward, then another, entirely absorbed in her task. The rancher followed silently, keeping a careful distance. He trusted her curiosity, but he also knew the dangers that came with wandering too far into the wilderness without caution. He had faced unexpected situations on this land many times, and experience had taught him to expect the unexpected. Suddenly, a soft rustle sounded behind the bush, faint but sharp. She froze, her fingers tightening on her camera. The bird startled and flitted away, disappearing into the trees. She exhaled in relief, but before she could relax completely, she noticed movement in the corner of her eye, a shadow shifting quickly, almost too fast to catch. The rancher's body tensed immediately. He stepped forward, placing a protective hand lightly on her shoulder. "Stay still," he whispered. His eyes scanned the clearing, alert and calculating. A second later, it happened. The arrow came from nowhere, an iron-tipped missile, moving faster than the eye could follow. She had barely time to gasp before it struck her, piercing her chest. Pain exploded through her body in a white-hot wave, stealing her breath. She stumbled backward, feeling the ground rise to meet her. Her hands clutched at the wound, and she cried out a sound full of terror and disbelief. The rancher was at her side instantly. His hands were steady but urgent as he grabbed the arrow, his fingers pressing against the wound to prevent it from moving further. She screamed again, the sharp edges of panic slicing through her mind. The pain was unbearable, but even as she struggled, she realized something even more frightening. The arrow was lodged deep, and she was bleeding fast. "Stay with me," the rancher said, his voice firm but calm. "I've got you. Don't fight it." Her vision blurred, and tears streaked down her face as she looked at him. His eyes were locked on hers, filled with determination, and yet there was a shadow of worry that flickered briefly. He had seen accidents before, but every life was precious, and he felt the weight of responsibility keenly. Slowly, carefully, he began to pull the arrow from her chest. She gasped, both in pain and shock, feeling the sting as it came free. Warm blood coated his hands, and for a moment she thought she might pass out. Her mind was foggy, but she clung to his steady gaze, drawing strength from his presence. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, though his voice carried a hint of urgency. "You just need to stay calm." Her tears fell freely now, and she shook her head weakly. "It hurts. It hurts so much," she whispered, her voice breaking. She felt vulnerable in a way she had never felt before, completely reliant on this man who had become her protector in an instant. The rancher pressed a handkerchief to the wound, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. He didn't speak for a moment, focusing entirely on her, checking her pulse and watching her breathing. He had learned in the past that panicking only made injuries worse, and he needed her calm, even if it was just a fraction of the fear coursing through her. For a moment she thought the worst had passed. The arrow was out, and he was there. But then she noticed something unusual. A small stain of blood spreading across his shirt, near his side. Her eyes widened in horror as she realized he was injured too. "Wait," she whispered, panic rising again. "You're bleeding." He shook his head slightly, trying to reassure her even as he felt the sting of his own wound. "Focus on yourself first. We'll get through this together." She could barely comprehend it. The man who had just saved her life was now hurt because of the same danger she had faced. She felt a mixture of fear, gratitude, and confusion swirl inside her. Her hands shook as she tried to help, pressing the cloth to the arrow wound in her chest while keeping one eye on the blood spreading on his side. The rancher's voice remained calm, but commanding. "Listen to me. I need you to take deep breaths. You can do this. I'm right here." She obeyed, inhaling and exhaling as best she could, though each breath caused a sharp pain in her chest. Tears continued to fall, and her vision blurred, but she focused on him, drawing strength from his presence. His hands, though slightly trembling from his own injury, guided hers, teaching her how to apply pressure and keep her blood from flowing too fast. For a few tense minutes they stayed like that, each supporting the other. The woman realized that this moment had changed everything. The fear she had felt moments ago was replaced with a deep, urgent connection to the man beside her. She saw not only his bravery but also his vulnerability, and it made her respect him even more. The rancher finally managed to stabilize her slightly, using his knowledge of first aid to keep the situation under control until they could get help. He motioned toward the trail back to the main ranch house. "We need to move. Slowly, but we have to get you to help." She nodded, gripping his arm tightly as they began the careful journey back. Every step was painful for her, but he supported her, his strong arms steadying her as they navigated the uneven terrain. The world around them seemed both familiar and alien. The same sunlit fields, the same rustling leaves, but now everything was tinged with fear and urgency. As they moved, the woman couldn't help but notice the way he handled his own injury. His face was calm, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the slight hitch in his step. He didn't complain. He didn't let her see the full extent of the pain. Instead, he focused entirely on her, his priority clear. "You're strong," he said quietly as they paused to catch their breath. "You're doing exactly what you need to do. Don't give up now." She wanted to argue, to tell him he was the strong one, but the words caught in her throat. She was overwhelmed by gratitude, fear, and the sharp sting of pain, and all she could do was nod and keep moving. The ranch stretched endlessly around them, and the sun continued its slow descent. Shadows grew longer, and the forest ahead darkened slightly, making the journey back even more tense. Every sound, the snap of a twig, the call of a distant bird, made her flinch, but the rancher's presence reassured her. He was alert, scanning constantly for danger, guiding her with steady hands and clear instructions. By the time they neared the main ranch house, her energy was nearly gone. Her chest ached, her hands were trembling, and her vision was still blurred from the pain and blood loss. Yet she felt a strange clarity as well, a deep, urgent awareness that she was alive because of him, and that they had formed an unspoken bond in these terrifying minutes. The rancher finally helped her sit on the porch steps, gently supporting her back. He took a moment to inspect his own wound, still pressing the cloth to hers, making sure both were as stable as possible. "We're almost there," he said. "Help is coming. You just have to hold on a little longer." She looked at him, tears streaming down her face, and realized the truth. She'd been terrified for her own life, but in that moment she felt a wave of emotion for him as well. He had risked everything to save her, even as he was bleeding. She had cried when he pulled the arrow from her chest, but now she understood. She wasn't alone in this fight. For the first time in her life, she felt a bond formed not by words, but by experience, by the shared fight for survival in a moment of pure fear and trust. And though the danger wasn't completely over, she knew that as long as he was by her side, there was hope. The woman's hands shook as she pressed the handkerchief against her chest, trying to slow the bleeding. She could feel the warmth spreading beneath her fingers, and each heartbeat sent a sharp, searing pain through her body. Her vision blurred at the edges, and she swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe in and out slowly. The rancher stayed close, leaning slightly on her for support, his own hand pressed against his side, trying to control his bleeding. For a moment, silence enveloped them. The soft sounds of the ranch, the rustling grass, the river flowing nearby, the distant calls of birds, seemed distant and unreal. Their world had narrowed to this small clearing, to the two of them, struggling to survive. Her eyes met his, and she finally noticed the red stain spreading across his shirt. Fear shot through her like ice. "You're hurt. You're really hurt," she exclaimed, panic rising in her voice. He shook his head slowly, forcing a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'll be fine," he said, though his voice carried a subtle strain. "Right now, you're the priority. I need you to stay awake. Focus on me." She had cried when the arrow had pierced her chest, but now the fear that he might not make it was something different, something far heavier. She realized in that instant how much she relied on him, not just for physical safety, but for courage, for guidance. He tried to take a shallow breath, and she noticed the faint hitch in it. His strength was immense, but the injury had its toll. She couldn't let herself panic. She had to act, even if every instinct screamed that they were in grave danger. "We need to move," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "We can't stay here. We need to get to the house or the barn. There's first aid inside." She nodded, her hands still trembling. "But I can barely walk," she said, her voice weak. "You can do it," he insisted. "I'll support you. Lean on me. We take it step by step, one step at a time." With his strong arms around her, they began moving slowly along the uneven path back to the main ranch house. Every step was painful. Her chest throbbed with every heartbeat, and his side burned, but neither of them stopped. The rancher's presence was steady and grounding, but she realized he was hurting far more than he let on. The strain in his movements, the occasional sharp exhale of breath, told her that his injuries were serious. As they walked, shadows lengthened across the land. The sun dipped lower, and the forest ahead seemed darker, more ominous. Every sound made her flinch, a branch snapping, the rustle of leaves, the distant howl of a coyote. The rancher's eyes scanned constantly, alert for any sign of danger, but she noticed that his vigilance now also masked discomfort and pain. "You're doing really well," he said quietly, noticing her hesitation as she nearly stumbled. "Don't stop. Keep your focus on me, not on the pain. You can do this." Her hands pressed against the cloth on her chest, tears blurring her vision. I don't know if I can," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Yes, you can," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "We've come this far. You can make it the rest of the way." They moved slowly, step by step, the distance to the house stretching endlessly. Each movement was a battle, each breath a sharp reminder of their fragility. She could feel herself growing weaker, but she also felt an unexpected surge of determination. He had risked himself to save her, and she refused to let him down. Halfway to the house, the woman stumbled, almost collapsing. The rancher caught her immediately, his strong arms holding her steady. She looked up at him, panic and fear in her eyes. I'm going to fall," she whispered. "You won't," he said, his eyes locking on hers. "I've got you. Lean on me. Trust me." Her chest heaved as she nodded, gripping him tightly. Together they moved forward, each step a shared effort. The rancher's own breathing was becoming more labored, but he never let her see the full extent of his pain. Instead, he focused on her, on guiding her safely, on keeping both of them alive. The woman realized something profound in that moment. This was no longer just a struggle to survive physically, it was a struggle of trust and courage. She had always thought of herself as independent, capable of handling anything, but now she understood the depth of reliance, the way human connection could sustain someone even in the darkest moments. She glanced at him again, noting the blood spreading across his shirt, the tension in his jaw, the slight wobble in his step. Fear gnawed at her, but she forced herself to push it aside. "I'm not leaving you," she said softly. "You won't have to," he replied, managing a faint smile despite the pain. "Just keep moving. That's all we need to do right now." The ranch stretched endlessly, the path winding through tall grass and scattered trees. The world around them seemed both familiar and alien in its beauty and danger. She tried to focus on the details, the rustle of the leaves, the distant sound of the river, but the constant reminder of their injuries made everything sharper, more intense. Every sound, every movement could signal danger. As they neared the small barn that stood near the house, she noticed a flash of movement out of the corner of her eye. She froze, her heart hammering in her chest. The rancher's hand tightened slightly around her arm. "Stay calm," he whispered. "It's probably just a deer." "Focus on me, not the shadows." She obeyed, taking a shaky breath and pressing herself closer to him. They moved slowly toward the barn, each step a careful negotiation between urgency and caution. She could feel his strength supporting her, carrying her forward even as he waged a silent battle with his own pain. Finally, they reached the barn door. The rancher pushed it open carefully and helped her inside. The barn smelled of hay and wood, warm and safe compared to the open fields. He guided her to a sturdy crate and helped her sit down, then knelt beside her to check the wound once more. "You're doing really well," he said softly. "I need you to stay awake. Don't close your eyes. Help is coming, but we need to stay alert." She nodded, exhausted but determined. Her hands still pressed against the wound. Her vision blurred, yet she focused on his face, drawing strength from him. He had risked himself to save her, and she would not give up. The rancher shifted slightly, and she noticed a fresh streak of blood on his side. Her panic surged again. "You're bleeding more. You need help, too." He shook his head, his jaw tight. "I can manage. Right now, you're the priority. Help will arrive soon. Just hold on." Minutes passed like hours as they waited. The woman's fear alternated with determination. She pressed the cloth to her chest, keeping herself upright, while keeping a careful eye on him. Every movement reminded her of the danger they had faced and the strength it had taken to survive. Finally, in the distance, she heard the faint sound of a vehicle approaching, the rumble of an engine over the dirt road. Relief flooded through her, but she didn't let go of the rancher. "They're here," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. He managed a small smile. "Good, we made it. Just a little longer." As the vehicle drew closer, the woman felt the weight of everything they had endured. Fear, pain, exhaustion, and trust all mixed together in a whirlwind of emotion. She realized that she had not only survived physically, but had formed a bond that went far deeper than words. They had faced life and death together, relying on each other in a way she had never imagined possible. When help finally arrived, they were both attended to, their injuries serious but manageable. The rancher received care for his wound, and she was treated for the arrow injury in her chest. Through it all, their eyes kept finding each other, a silent acknowledgement of the trust, courage, and connection that had formed in the face of danger. Even as they were moved to safety, the woman realized the truth. This moment would stay with her forever. She had cried when the arrow pierced her chest, but now she understood that survival was never about facing danger alone. It was about trust, courage, and the people who stood beside you when the world seemed ready to fall apart. And for the first time, she felt something she had never felt before, a deep, unshakable gratitude for the man who had risked everything to save her, even while bleeding himself. In that moment, she knew that life, fragile and unpredictable, could bring people together in ways nothing else could. The sound of the approaching vehicle grew louder, breaking the heavy silence inside the barn. Dust rose outside as the truck stopped near the entrance. Voices followed, urgent but calm, and footsteps moved quickly toward the door. The woman felt a wave of relief wash over her, so strong that her eyes filled with tears again. She had tried to stay brave, but now that help was finally here, the tension she had been holding inside began to release. The rancher remained beside her, still pressing one hand against his side. His face looked pale under the soft barn light, yet his eyes remained steady. Even now he was watching her carefully, making sure she stayed awake. His strength amazed her. Despite his own pain, his first concern was still her safety. The barn door opened wider, and 2 ranch workers rushed inside, along with a local medic who often helped in emergencies around the countryside. They had clearly come prepared. One carried a medical kit, another brought blankets, and their expressions showed concern but not panic. They were used to handling difficult situations. "There you are," one of the workers said gently. "We got your call. Let's take care of you both." The medic knelt first beside the woman. His voice was calm and reassuring as he checked the cloth pressed against her chest. "You've done well," he told her. "The bleeding has slowed." That helped a lot. She nodded weakly, still clutching the cloth. "He saved me," she whispered, glancing toward the rancher. "Please check him too." "He's hurt." The medic gave a small, understanding nod and motioned for one of the workers to assist the rancher. The rancher resisted slightly at first, as if he did not want attention, but the worker insisted gently. Soon both of them were being cared for at the same time. The woman watched as they examined the rancher's side. Seeing the injury clearly made her chest tighten again, not from physical pain this time, but from emotion. She had not realized earlier how serious it looked, yet he had stayed strong, guiding her all the way back without complaint. "You should have told me it was this bad," she said softly. He gave a faint smile. "You needed calm, not worry, and you made it. That's what matters." Those simple words stayed with her. They carried warmth, quiet courage, and a kind of kindness she rarely saw in people. After basic treatment in the barn, both were carefully helped into the truck. The ride to the nearby clinic felt slow, even though the driver moved as quickly as the rough road allowed. The woman sat supported by blankets while the medic monitored her breathing. Across from her, the rancher leaned back quietly, finally allowing himself to rest. For a while, neither spoke. They simply looked at each other occasionally, a silent understanding passing between them. Words seemed unnecessary after everything they had faced together. When they reached the clinic, more medical staff were ready. The atmosphere was professional but comforting. They were guided inside, examined thoroughly, and treated with care. The process took time, but gradually both began to feel safer. The wounds, though serious, were not beyond recovery. That news alone lifted a huge weight from both of them. Hours later, when the immediate danger had passed, the woman lay resting in a quiet room. The soft hum of machines and distant footsteps filled the background. She felt exhausted but stable. The doctor had assured her she would recover fully with proper rest. Her thoughts drifted back to the rancher. She wondered how he was doing. The memory of his steady voice, his protective presence, and the courage he had shown filled her with deep gratitude. A gentle knock came at the door. One of the nurses smiled. "You have a visitor," she said. Moments later, the rancher stepped inside. He moved slowly but looked stronger already. A bandage was visible at his side, yet his calm expression remained the same. Seeing him standing there made her smile for the first time since the accident. "You should be resting," she said. "So should you," he replied lightly. They both laughed softly, the tension finally easing. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said what had been in her heart for hours. "Thank you. I don't think I would be here without you. You stayed strong, too. It wasn't just me. We got through it together." That simple truth, meant a lot to her. She realized he was right. Survival had been a shared effort built on trust and cooperation. Over the next few days, both remained under observation. Recovery was steady. The woman found herself thinking often about the ranch, the open fields, the quiet strength of the land, and the man who knew it so well. What had started as a photography visit had turned into an experience that changed her deeply. When they were finally discharged, the rancher offered to drive her back to the ranch so she could collect her belongings. The ride felt peaceful compared to the earlier chaos. The landscape looked just as beautiful as before, but now it carried new meaning. She saw not only beauty but also respect for nature, caution, and appreciation for life. At the ranch, the sun was setting again, much like the day everything had happened. Horses grazed calmly, and the wind moved gently through the grass. It felt almost symbolic, a reminder that life continues even after difficult moments. She stepped out of the truck slowly, breathing in the familiar scent of earth and hay. The rancher stood beside her, hands in his pockets, watching the horizon. "It still feels peaceful," she said. "It always has been," he replied. "But peace doesn't mean absence of challenge. It means learning to live with it." His words carried wisdom she would not forget. Before leaving, she turned to him. "I think this experience changed me. I came here looking for pictures. I'm leaving with something much deeper." He nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes life teaches in unexpected ways." There was no dramatic declaration, no grand moment, just a quiet understanding. A bond had formed through shared struggle, and it did not need elaborate words. As she prepared to leave, she felt a mixture of gratitude and hope. The future felt uncertain but brighter. She knew she would return to visit the ranch again, not just for photography, but for the connection she had found there. The rancher watched her go, a small smile on his face. He had always believed that helping others was simply part of life, yet this experience had reminded him how powerful human connection could be, even in the toughest moments. The woman glanced back once more before getting into the car. Their eyes met, and both understood that something meaningful would remain between them. Respect, trust, and quiet friendship born from adversity. As the car drove away, the ranch returned to its calm rhythm. The wind moved softly across the fields, the same as always, yet everything somehow felt richer. Life had shown them both its fragile side. But it had also shown strength, kindness, and the unexpected ways people can support each other. And that realization, more than anything else, stayed with them, a reminder that even in moments of fear, courage, and compassion can create bonds strong enough to last a lifetime.